I would have pointed to the comics and go, when can we do this? When can we really take the shackles off and emulate the storytelling from the comics on the screen? And that's what we were able to do finally on the MCU movie.
The big idea of Peter going to Doctor Strange, and in doing so, causes this rift in the multiverse.
Peter, stop tampering with the spell.
I think those sort of repercussions of Peter's actions are something that just harkens back to the original comics.
We all cherish the source material, so the nice thing about working with the folks at Marvel is that they're all fans.
We had already been talking about having Doctor Strange be the MCU character in this movie, and that seemed like a really organic path to opening the multiverse, which would allow us to bring those characters played by those actors into our movie.
Making the heroes as relatable as possible to the audience is something that Toby did a spectacular job of.
I will always be Spider-Man.
But he was embracing the core of what the character was from the comics. That's what Stan Lee and Steve Ditko did.
And so now here we are, and what an interesting take when I heard what was going on, that they were going to cross realities too through this, and it's informed by the books.
It is very full circle in a surreal way that if you'd asked me when I first stepped foot on Sam's Spider-Man set if we would get this, I would have said, wouldn't it be cool if? I would have said, boy, that would be amazing.
Don't make me a murderer, Peter.
For Easter eggs and nods to the comics, there's moments, for example, with Electro and having that iconic star around his head. How do you realize that in a photographic, realistic sort of way? And that's something we want to do, but it also has to be tasteful and look photorealistic too. And the same thing with Peter Parker and his Spidey sense when Strange knocks him into the astral plane. Peter Parker is his astral form, and he's got these little squiggles around his head.
This feels amazing.
And so we're gonna see how, okay, what would that look like? And, you know, without looking too, like, 2D graphic, you know, how do we do a version of that? But people still who are in the know get it and go, yeah.
Spider Menace. Governments around the world launch investigations into the murderer known as Spider-Man.
What?
Don't say anything without a lawyer!
I think we had thought that by bringing in J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah, we could plant the seed that potentially there is a multiverse.
Now I gotcha.
Everybody got really excited about having J.K. play J. Jonah.
The damage, the destruction. You saw it with your own eyes.
Him being this kind of pestering guy with Peter Parker is something that he always was in the comics, but now we get to see him a little bit more grounded, a little more realized, and a kind of character that, you know, we might see in the real world.
Even though he's now in this cheesy online network news, the character, to me, will always be a throwback to, you know, what Stan Lee and the gang were putting on paper 50, 60 years ago.
They're here. They're here because of you.
The MCU existed before Spider-Man was brought in Civil War, so there was a whole tone that had already been established in terms of what that world and how people spoke in that world and how the heroes were treated and how it was just very different. Obviously very similar to elements of some of the comics, but also different and specific.
It's always a huge challenge to take something from the source material, and there's years and years, decades and decades of it, bring it to the screen and try to make it fresh and interesting while also honoring what that source material was. And so with every character, with every storyline, anytime that kind of thing is happening, we're all talking about it and really being deliberative about satisfying the fans, but also giving them a slightly new twist on the thing that they've seen before than the comics that are so beloved. We're all willing to look at those characters in a new light and say, what are we gonna do with this? And on this movie, we've got an opportunity to have Peter teamed up with Doctor Strange in a way that we've never done before. And so now we get to look at the source material. Oh, what are some cool stories where they first met? And what would that look like now? And it's just been really fun.
One of the things about bringing Doctor Strange into this movie was we could bring him into a world of magic. And I think that is bigger than like story world that the MCU gives us.
What's happening?
They're starting to come through and I can't stop them.
There's gotta be something we could do. Can't you just cast the spell again? Most directors would go, oh, we've got Matt Murdock, we've got Daredevil, Charlie Cox is coming. All right, well, let's put him in the suit and put him in the fight scene. Jon Watts is like, no, that's too obvious. He's a lawyer, right? But why don't we make him Peter Parker's lawyer?
Well, I have some good news, Peter. I don't believe any of the charges against you are gonna stick.
Wait, seriously?
I knew it.
Nice.
Oh my God, Mr. Murdock, thank you.
Thank you,
That's amazing. It was a lot of fun. Charlie was great to work with. He was really happy to be there. It was a real, like, regular scene, carrying a lot of weight, and one that we knew that fans would freak out in the cinema. I love the reveal, the way that he puts the paper down, you go up the cane, you then see his face. I love him catching the globe through the window, and it was amazing, and it was cool, and it's just a nice little detail to just show the world how the MCU is constantly growing, constantly expanding. It's just, again, another tip of the hat as to the endless possibilities that Marvel has. You mean like I could have called them?
Yeah.
I could do that?
It feels like it's very rich. And I think it's because the source material is so rich. It doesn't feel forced. It feels like it's unfolding. And there are a lot of people who really embrace the films and grew up with the films who want to learn more about these characters.
So it's part of the Marvel lore, right, is the multiverse. And that was something we were guys going to use and get to. So it was kind of organic. It leads directly into what we want to do anyways, because, you know, we were always thinking about the next Strange being the multiverse. It helped to solidify the idea 100%. Once the idea formed, okay, who else can we get? Who else can we get? Who else can we get? And it kind of like, it got bigger and bigger and kept growing from that initial concept and idea. So just seeing these characters on screen together has been mind-blowing.